Chapter 2. The Seeds of Evil. My parents were peaceful people. They hated conflicts, quarrels, and fighting, and it was forbidden in our home. Nothing was bad enough to warrant a fight. If your older sister or brother hit you, you did not hit back. You reported the matter to the parents or to one of the adults present in the compound. Human nature being very complex, the prosperity of our family started to arouse envy. When I was almost 13, my happiness began to take deadly blows. Not everybody was delighted to see my family prosper. Bad things began to happen to both my family and to me. Some students from Baba, Kong, and Vutu schools, a mean-spirited bunch, beat me up without provocation. They mocked me and made provocative comments about certain parts of my body. They seemed to seriously enjoy this malicious exercise. Those became the dark years of my childhood. By that point, my mother had made up her mind that any time there was a problem, I had started it. I had been somewhat hyperactive as a younger child and had indeed started a few fights in those years. My parents, peaceful as they were, had been concerned by my hyperactivity. With this background in mind, I did not bother to report the abuse to them. I was not fighting back either. I became depressed and psychologically disturbed. I endured humiliations and mockeries without crying or complaining. These were turned into a childhood nightmare. I became so depressed I lost those 2 academic years and repeated the grade. Around the same time, I faced my first instance of sexual abuse. I insist on our religious dogma for a better understanding of the reasoning of the girl child that I was. Without trying to clear myself of some of my incomprehensible silences, my wounds of the soul conceal mysteries and unvoiced comments. But when one comes from a deeply believing and insufficiently informed family, one can be disarmed in front of the inhumaneness of humankind. Mine was a devout Roman Catholic family. My mother and grandmothers were in the Legion of Mary. No one in my immediate environment ever took a critical look at our religion. It would have been construed as blasphemy. Sexuality was taboo in my family. One did not especially call things by their name. The assistant principal of the School of Kong, a priest, he was a national of our neighboring country, came to my class one day and ordered me and some other children to go to his office. He was a Bantu man of about 37 years, average size, very dark and slender. An influential man. His very presence caused both calm and fear among the pupils. When we arrived at his office, he called us in individually and made sure that I would be the last child called. When my turn came to step in, his tone of voice changed suddenly, saying very softly while pulling me towards him, "I want us to become friends." And he began to fondle me. I was in the 7th grade at the time. I had no visible breasts. My hair was constantly shaven. I was without defense in front of this powerful stranger. For a moment, I was paralyzed with fear. I understood that what he was doing was not normal. It was clearly a sexual act, and that this was not supposed to happen. Fear hit me in the stomach like a hammer. The ringing of the bell signaling the end of the 10 o'clock break gave me the impetus to pull myself out of his grip and run back to my class. But by the time I got back to the class, I was traumatized. I was also confused. As a devout Roman Catholic, I knew a priest was a holy man of God. Therefore, I did not blame the priest. Rather, I blamed myself, thinking, what is it in me that made this man of God do what he did to me? This worsened my depression. I became absent-minded and spent most of my time daydreaming. I became withdrawn. Nothing was fun anymore. My sleep was filled with nightmares. I was divided between hatred and fear. Wasn't a priest a saintly man in the service of God? Wasn't I guilty? Did I have the right to blame a saintly man? My parents noticed that something was wrong with me, and they were worried, but they never knew what had caused such distress to my personality. They probably thought it was the beating by the bad kids, so they took the matter to the children's parents. This did not improve my mood. All their protection and attention did not have any significant benefit to my state of mind and heart. My parents' decision to send me to Uncle El Nkunu was inspired by God himself. He was the principal of the Roman Catholic primary school of Nkol Nkumu, a few kilometers into the Yaoundé-Douala dirt road. He always took time to listen to me every time I had a problem with anybody, child or adult. His understanding and love helped me recover from my depression quickly. Uncle Nkunu had one wife whom he obviously loved a great deal. They loved each other and played together as if they were kids. They had 3 young children at the time. The village people in the environment were very friendly, and I quickly became a happy young girl once again. Uncle N's real love and understanding had a magic effect on me. I became assertive again, and my school grades improved significantly. The abrupt transfer of my uncle from Nkul-Nkumu to Vutu, a village not so easily accessible, was a low blow from his employers. Not only was the dirt road to this village poorly maintained, thus making it almost inaccessible by car, especially during the rainy season, there were no houses for teachers to rent. Consequently, the teachers from this school system depended on the hospitality of the people of the village. Was my lack of enthusiasm premonition with regard to moving to Vutu village? In any case, a great part of my destiny as a woman was played there. Looking back, it amazes me how I got over the repeated sexual abuse I suffered in this village from the entire family, their 2 teenaged children who lived in the city excluded, that hosted us there. I will later consider the faith and the related spirituality which enabled me to be restored. Left in the claws of the family that lodged us, I suffered unimaginable traumas. Uncle Nkunu never knew that our host abused me sexually. This man was one of the notables of the village. He owned a 3-house compound. The big house, his mother's house in the middle, and his wife's big kitchen behind his mother's. I and my uncle's wife and young children were under the care of our host's wife during the daytime. I did my house chores in her kitchen house. Occasionally, I would be asked to help at his mother and sister's house instead. I was sleeping at the host's mother's and his divorced sister's house. With their complicity, they opened the door for him in the middle of the night while my uncle slept. He would come when his wife traveled far from the village and would wake me up, first making the hush sign, then commanding me to follow him. And I would find myself in his marital bedroom. He would then talk to me in a friendly tone of voice. The disgust for these despicable acts prevents me from giving you more details. This happened at least twice. The host's wife, who probably never knew what her husband did to me, also took advantage of my uncle's trust. On Saturdays, there were no classes. She would take me to work and fetch food in her farms up in the hills. It was during one such occasion that she brought her husband's older nephew to use me in a bush near their cocoa plantation. Prior to this, she had brought another man, not a direct relative of theirs, to abuse me sexually. One evening, my uncle's wife had traveled, and we were sitting and talking in her kitchen house. One of the men in the village called her outside. She stepped out for a few minutes. When she came back, she asked me to step outside the house because someone wanted to talk to me. What transpired is too disgusting for any further description. She had turned me into a sexual object for the men of the village and ensured unsuspected access to me. The host's younger nephew who lived with them also abused me sexually and physically more frequently. One evening, he too brought one of the teachers of the public school system of the village to also abuse me sexually. Rape is an inhuman act. For the victim, it is worse than a deep wound. It is a stain of the soul, a brutal invasion of one's intimate being, with total disregard to the horrors being inflicted. The after effects are multiple. A deeply wounded spirit with feelings of insecurity and helplessness, intimacy reduced to carnality, and saddest of all, the assurance of scars carried for the rest of the victim's life. For most women, virginity is the subject of a great personal pride, the blue-chip stock of femininity. While a virgin, you dream of the ideal man, that special man with whom you will be insanely in love, and to whom you dream to offer your heart and virginity. And suddenly, some other unwelcome man, or men for some, a stranger or an acquaintance, steps on all this, crushes your dreams and feelings, your very soul, with malicious delight, and walks away laughing at your expense, and you are scarred for life. My emotions as I write this section of the story make me understand how painful it is to forget so deep a wound, which will haunt you all your life. For those who suffered the same trauma, to share my story with you is also to help you toward recovery. Yes, recovery is possible in Jesus Christ. He is the only one who can cure the wound of the heart or soul. I did not report these things to my uncle because sex was implicitly a taboo subject in our environment. Besides, if I had reported the abuse to my uncle, it would have put us in a more precarious situation. We were strangers in a hilly village that saw a truck passing only rarely. Things were made worse during the rainy season because the poorly maintained old feeder roads got too muddy and slippery even for the adequately equipped cocoa and coffee beans buyers' trucks. In spite of all this ugliness, Uncle N's love and understanding were such a boost that I managed to numb myself to my humiliation and pain and feel as if I were happy again. I now realize that it was repression and self-deception, managing to deceive myself that I was still a virgin. In an emergency move, Uncle N decided to send me back to the city before the end of the academic year. He simply explained to me that some people were bothering him because of me. That is, they were asking him permission to marry me. He never told our host that I was leaving the village for good. He told them that I was going to visit my parents in the city for a few days, which was very wise of him. I can only guess that the harasser was our host. Uncle N had made an arrangement with Uncle B. Awuma, principal of an all-girl Roman Catholic primary school in the city, for me to complete my academic year there. Uncle Awuma took care of my registration for both the school and the exam. It was through that school that I passed my first school leaving certificate with flying colors. God bless Uncle Awuma. Uncle N intervened in my life at the right moment and succeeded in giving it a direction. Had it not been for his effective support, I wonder what would have become of me. Uncle Nakunu will remain a hero to me, and all my life I will have him in high esteem. Years later, I visited him before my departure for the United States. I made him a small gift, a token of my gratitude for the saving role he played in my life and for his importance as a person to me. I intend to help at least one of his children. Very modest as he was, he never even mentioned his kind gesture to me, neither did he ask for anything in return, in spite of my letting him know that I would be delighted to help. He was a man faithful to only one woman. His recent sudden death, apparently of heart failure, which could have been avoided, represents a very great loss for me.